Hello, everybody. It is Jason at Con+3, and I am back once again with Joe from Heroic Maps, one of our long-running sponsors. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm good, thank you.
Glad to hear it. So, how have been things during the lockdown with you two? Because I imagine sales have been through the roof as more people have been kind of getting online to play, but you are your own business as well, and you have certain targets to reach.
Yeah, no, actually, we were initially a bit worried about the lockdown because we thought if people are losing their jobs and things, then hobby expenditure will be sort of like low on their priorities. But actually, because everyone has missed their games in person. I mean, we have, we like
Mm.
haven't played anything in person with anyone for ages. Um, but then the VT, all the Roll20 and Astral and Fancy Grounds all like up their game and saying, look, you can try our things for free, and everyone's been trying VTT, and everyone has made a massive jump to VTT.
Mm.
That actually our sales have been really good. So
Yeah.
um, it's good. We're really happy that we put together some VTT bundles of like starter packs, because obviously many people will have never played VTT ever,
Yes. Yeah.
and suddenly find themselves needing to. So we put some packs together of common sort of like common dungeons and that sort of stuff. So but no, it's been obviously we've been doing our Patreon now for uh coming up to three years this in like September or something.
Yeah.
And that's grown, and so our sort of commitments with that have increased lots as well. And so whereas because we've always sort of based it on a flat rate thing of you have your pledge, and then we add things to that pledge. So the more patrons we have, the more value that pledge becomes. And as it stands currently, you get something like about 7 maps, I think, and like adventure things and stuff. So that's been running alongside our sort of regular drive-through releases and stuff.
Cool.
And we've been trying to make sure we find time to put out new stuff because you know people are looking for VTT things and different adventures and stuff.
Yeah, do you think that the emphasis is definitely more VDT, or are there still people who want to come on and get like your pre-printed grids and things like that?
I mean, the pre-printed cards have always been actually um, like a low seller, really. And so people buy our stuff, and we only know from like talking to them on Twitter or on Patreon and stuff, the sort of balance of VTT versus print at home sort of people and things. But like our print on demand from drive through is quite a small range, mainly because the card size offered by drive through as like an American print company, who they use for their printers,
Yeah.
um, doesn't really. We work in a metric way, so all our maps
Mm.
are multiples of 10, right? Because metric is the way to go. And
Mm.
so because drive through have weird like letter sized print things and 8 by 11 inches and those sort of things and stuff, which doesn't really match very well with our maps. We haven't really pushed that range, and so sales there haven't really changed much. But we are seeing people sort of mentioning that they are doing VTT, and we've had lots of new people have joined us on Patreon and have
Brilliant.
said, "Oh, I've started a VTT campaign with my friends and stuff, and I've come to get your maps and those sort of things." So we are seeing more mention of VTT, and obviously, unless you are lucky enough that your campaign party live in your house, like all of them, then you're going to be doing print things, right?
Yeah.
Doing things less than normal.
Yeah, of course. All right, let's talk a bit about things that you have been releasing recently, because yeah, you are still putting out a lot of content,
Yeah.
in your kind of very sort of frequent, energetic way. You're always putting new stuff out.
Mm.
One of the things I spotted on Drive Through, you've got a new set of giant maps called the Dragon's
Well, the
Graveyard.
dragon, yeah, the dragon's graveyard. Yeah, that
Mm.
was actually really fun. So one of our Patreons contacted us and said, "Oh yeah, I'm running this campaign with my friends and stuff, and it's been like a 3 or 4 year campaign, and it's coming up to this big boss fight, the big grand finale sort of thing. And do we have anything that would sort of work as a sort of large dragon's graveyard. And he gave me a link to an episode of Dungeons and Dragons, the 80s cartoon, where they go through some sort of portal into some sort of astral plane thing. And Tiamat's there, and there's this big dragon boneyard and things and stuff. And he's like, "Have you got anything like this?" And I was like, "No, but we should have. This is really cool." And so we sort of penciled it in as a thing for this sort of spring. And I drew it out, and I thought, this is really cool. This is really good. And then I thought, oh, but imagine, what if the dragons go and die in a desert, or what if the dragons go and die in a forest, or what if they do? And I couldn't stop thinking of places where dragons might go and die. And so in the end, you were like, well, we have to do all the variants, because you never know, someone's playing their game. We don't want to force where the dragons die. You want to have freedom in dragon death location. So we ended up doing, I think, 7 variants for the pack sort of thing. And it was really fun because it meant that, we could like reskin the map in different ways, which make it more useful, depending on where you want it to be, So, and the guy that had asked for it, actually, when he saw the whole pack of 7, he actually shifted his campaign plan, which was going to be the one more inspired by the episode, and he shifted it to like a one with all like astral magic and ley lines and that sort of stuff, because he thought, that was that inspired him in a different way. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it's cool. And as well, I suppose if you kind of just want to put it in, and you've already kind of got either a campaign or a few sessions in a specific terrain, that way you've got the versatility to pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did another map back in for Valentine's. We always do like a Valentine's themed map, or like, loosely love or heart related. And we did one called the Heart of Stone, which was a giant skeleton, and the heart had turned to stone. Right, hence it was like some sort of Valentine's-esque sort of thing. Anyway, but that we had variants too. We did like a haunted one and in a swamp one, and lava and various things stuff. Because actually, when you're doing a campaign and you've got your adventure in a desert area, it can be hard to find. Oh great, look, a boneyard. That's great. That's what I need. Oh, but it's a winter dragon boneyard thing, sort of thing. So what we try and do is we try and give as much material that will match someone's campaign, so either through variants or just through like sheer number of maps, because we've got something like, I think we're about 550 maps on drive-through now. And we released about 150-ish on Patreon. And those maps on Patreon do trickle onto drive-through once they're old enough. But that's a crazy number of maps. We sort of added it up the other day. I'm like, that's a huge number of maps, and it does mean though that when someone wants a particular location or a particular theme or something, we probably have a map for it. There's a lot of maps.
Even with like say patrons coming and asking you for things, or maybe even requesting something, do you ever find that you get a bit worried that you might run out of ideas or get like a writing
No,
block?
because the patron, like we've got like our notes have got a backlog of hundreds of ideas and stuff, and we either get ideas when we watch things on TV or games we play or books we read and those sort of things. So we've got a huge list of locations. We've got a huge list of like updates to previous sets that we want to sort of bring out, So we go, oh, hang on, it'd be really cool if we had an adjoining map for this, or we had a different set of rooms for this, or those sort of things. But also the patrons, we like really heavily involve our patrons all the time on our thing. We're always asking them for idea suggestions and polls and those sort of things. Every month on our Patreon, we have like a core map of the month, and so that is a map that we decide the theme for and decide the sort of we make the map. We show it to them, and at the start of the month, and we say, right, this is the main map. What ideas do you have for reimagining it? And so we have dozens and dozens of answers, sometimes hundreds of suggestions for how we could sort of reskin that map. It might be so. For example, our most recent one is do you know the painting "The Isle of the Dead" by what's his name? Arnold Broken. Andre Brooklyn, I think it is,
It
and
does. It
it's
does
like
ring a bell. Yeah.
it's a like a Greek-esque island with like
Yeah.
cypress trees and that sort of. So we saw that painting. We thought, let's make that. So we made that as our main map. We asked the patrons, and we said, what would you reimagine this as? And so they were saying like a pirate cove and a prison, and a monastery in the desert and underwater for like merfolk, and like there was just hundreds of ideas. And you know, we then sort of shortlist down to 5 or 6 ideas, run a poll for that, and the winner of that poll gets made as an alt version for that. But we also then often either those ideas are such good ideas, we then go, oh great, we should make that. Then we go and make it, and it might be on a drive-through thing, or we might make it as a bonus map for the patrons, or So I mean, we've got lists of ideas coming out of our heads, and sometimes we'll look through our old notebooks from like 7 years ago and find a map that we drew in our infancy, which is a bit pants, and then we'll go, but the idea is good, so let's redraw it. But the concept is a good concept, and so
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you think about the sort of like how unlimited fantasy locations are,
Yeah.
and how literally you could have an adventure anywhere. Like we just blur ideas everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So moving from fantasy to your sci-fi collection, because that's growing now as well. I know that you just started with fantasy and kind of moved into that. In fact, your latest release, I believe, is another sci-fi map. So
Yeah,
the
Dark Starship corridors.
Yeah.
Room. Yeah. We definitely started as fantasy only, and then a few years back we sort of made more sci-fi things, and we definitely still more heavily towards the fantasy releases. But it was interesting, was at the start of this month, we noticed that, or last month, start of March, our sci-fi things were selling some of the, like, for the sort of rate of change of sales, the sci-fi was up massively. And we're like, what, has someone like put a link to our thing? Because like, what was this sort of surge from? But we sort of figured that maybe people going online for VTTs for the first time are thinking about trying new systems, trying new RPG sets, and then games like Starfinder and things, and Star Wars. People are going, well, I haven't got a lot of minis to play Starfinder in person, but it doesn't matter if you are playing a VTT. So we think people might have tried new systems, and that gave a surge there. So we thought, okay, well, we need to definitely make sure that we are putting out some more stuff. And we had done Dark Starship Corridors set, which was sort of inspired by Death Star sort of aesthetics. Did that first set 3 years ago. And we normally do, with modulars, we normally do a corridors set, and we do a room set of like themed encounter rooms. And for some reason, like pretty scheduled things, we hadn't got round back in 2017 to doing the rooms pack for that. And it was one of our best-selling sci-fi sets, and we're like, hang on, we've got to do this. So we went back and did some like very heavily inspired by Star Wars. So it was quite fun. It's actually been quite fun, like watching clips of Star Wars and stuff, or looking in there's like those books of cutaway diagrams of things inside Star Wars and stuff, and then trying to turn those bits into locations which are generic enough that if you're not playing Star Wars, you can still use it as like an evil spaceship or whatever.
Yeah.
But equally, will be recognised by people who do play Star Wars. So we've got Palpatine's throne room on Death Star, and we've got the control room, with the bridge with the lower computer desk areas where the grey shirts go and stuff. And so it was really fun doing those things, and I think people have responded well to it and are happy to pick it up for stuff.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of more kind of universal sci-fi stuff as well, I know, and to me they come across these sort of dark corridors or outposts almost like Alien, like the Alien movies, where you're kind of there with the PCs and then maybe the creature comes to you. Having said that, are you looking to maybe create some more kind of exterior terrain or more alien-like terrain?
Well, that's the thing that has gone onto our Patreon, because we've got a sci-fi tier, which is like fantasy plus sci-fi, and alien terrains, alien jungles and forests and those sort of things, they come up lots as sort of requests there. And so we have actually put out a handful of like alien forests and crash sites and terrains and stuff. But they're on Patreon currently,
Okay.
and they will eventually drip, because our sort of model is that they're exclusive on Patreon for the first year, and then we drip them onto drive-through afterwards.
Fine, yeah. And I also noticed you had a couple of more cyberpunk maps as well. This
Yeah,
new Atami,
that's
which looks really
the
cool.
new Atami range. Yeah, that has been an incredibly popular sort of range of maps. So that was a like a competition winner sort of thing on Patreon. We asked sci-fi tier people suggest a sort of sci-fi location that you don't really see much of, and then we rolled. We had like 40 entries, so we did like some dice rolls and stuff, and picked a random winner, and it was like a cyberpunk nighttime street scene or something. And I was like, oh, that's quite different to what we've done before. It's like artistically, it's quite a jump in style and things, but then at the same time, there is a very iconic look for those things, and the
Yes.
neon lights and the sort of like reflective wet streets and stuff. And so we tried it, and we were really happy with it. That was the first one on Patreon, and then the winning sci-fi polls for the following like 3 months were all add-ons to the new Atami range. And then we also did some maps that we put on drive-through. There's like a plaza based on Times Square,
Yeah.
and those sort of things. And so actually, obviously, if you're playing those games, there's not a load of maps for them in existence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk myself, but I find even like other people I know who like try and look for maps, if they're going to sci-fi, it's always kind of more space opera. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
kind of Blade Runner, type
yeah.
cities or anything like that. So, are you looking to expand on that at all? Like
Yeah, we
personally,
are,
or
and we're thinking of maybe doing like a geomorph range.
cool.
So like 10 by 10 squares of those streets and plazas and those sort of things and stuff. And maybe try and do some daytime ones, because they've
Yes,
all
yeah.
been nighttime, because that's the classic look. But obviously, these towns would also have daytime. So
Mm.
it's about finding the right sort of like look for it, because when you take away the nighttime, it's hard to make it look still different enough to not just be a regular street, because
Yeah, yeah,
cyberpunk and sort of like gritty city looks are, it's a thin line between them. Like once the
sure.
neon lights go, you've lost a very clear visual cue that this is cyberpunk, and it makes it harder to think. But I mean, we've been doing maps now for like seven years,
Yes, yeah.
and like our proficiency with doing stuff and tackling designs and stuff that we wouldn't have dreamt of doing 7 years ago. We would have gone, there's no way we can make this look like this, so we're going to leave that map. Just the thing of practice, that thousands of hours of map making, and now we feel confident with those sort of things. So we're not daunted by tackling different things. I mean, one thing we want to tackle, we tried this like 4 years ago. We wanted to do some zombie apocalypse sort of maps,
Okay.
like cracked highways with dead leaves and stuff, and like run down garages and stuff and whatever. And we did a map. It never got released. We did it though, and it was like it doesn't look right, and the textures are wrong, and so we scrapped that, and we thought this isn't ready for this yet. But we've actually got it earmarked down for this year to look into trying that again, and
Awesome.
seeing if we can bring that up, because that would look cool.
That's fantastic, yeah. So when you're actually sitting down and making these maps and going through the process of that, do you have like a favorite type or terrain that you prefer to make, or does it just depend on what you're making?
I think the ones I think I like dungeons the most, I think.
Okay.
And I particularly like cave dungeon combos. So you go into a cave, and then you find like a catacomb that the cave is sort of broken into, and you go into those sort of bits. I like doing things with lighting, like torches and magic glows and
Yeah.
stuff, and they often work best you get a better effect of those inside buildings, because then you get to do shadows like falling from columns and around corners and stuff, and that actually gives a lot of depth and a lot of life to the maps and stuff. And I really like doing town maps, but they are like the most time consuming of, so let's say you had a dungeon, a 30 by 30 dungeon. The amount of time that goes into making that is maybe a third the time of making the equivalent size town. Because of the town, you want to make the houses interesting. So we like to, we don't just do identical, like clone stamped house interiors for every house. Every house is different, and we try and have an idea of what the house was used for, who uses it. Oh, it's attached to the bakery, so that's the baker's shop, and that's the baker's house, and what would they have in there, and their family, do they have 1 bed, 2 beds, have they got a table for 4, and those sort of things, so that if you're playing with them, you can either gain inspiration from the map itself, or the map is consistent with how you might then play the characters. So if you go, oh, this is the baker and they live on their own, and then you go in there and they've got 6 beds and a table with 14 chairs, you're like, well, why he live on his own? Why has he got so many beds? And so we try and we sort of think hard about those things. But that means that making a town map is really good, but there's a lot more work in placing all those items and deciding the furniture of the rooms and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, everybody's way of creating their campaigns is different. So I suppose you're never going to quite match exactly what every GM wants to see.
No. So that's why we try and put out as many things as we can, and also in different formats. So we have a big range of standalone maps, which are here is the map, here's a location, this is the layout of this dungeon or this town or this whatever. And then we also have geomorphs, where you've got like a 10 by 10 square which rotates freely with neighboring tiles, and so therefore you can within sort of like quite quickly put down a large chunk of town, and you can turn it around and change the tiles, which gives you some freedom in that. And then we've got modulars, which are even more free, where either the buildings or the roads or the dungeon bits are made up of discrete tiles and rooms with corridor bits and turnings and junctions and stuff. And that lets you have massive freedom to build those things. We also, I think we launched it maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. We have a range called Discover, and the Discover range basically is a surface map with various exits or doors or caves or whatever the sort of entrance thing is, and then we provide a set of interiors or subterranean bits or whatever the thing is, and they're totally independent of the surface map in terms of where you put them, and so that lets you decide for your campaign what's in that cave. So we've got like a Discover Halflingshire, which is like a Hobbit sort of Hobbiton sort of thing, and so the surface map is 4 or 5 Hobbit mound burrow mound things with doors, and a separate set of the interiors of houses and bakeries and a town hall and a tavern and whatever and stuff. And so when you're playing, if you want them all just to be houses, well, there's a set of different houses and you can decide which one you put there. We've got a mausoleum set, like a Victorian mausoleum, and so when you go into these buildings, the GM can decide from a big range of different locations what's inside this one here. And we're actually working on this week. We're doing a new range called like Discover Village, or around that sort of thing, because I played actually, funnily enough, my first VTT game like last night, because I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I've always played in person, and so we did a VTT game last night, and I was like setting it up and things, and I thought, what, we haven't got enough villages. Like, we wanted to have the players go to a handful of villages, and we've done a lot of village maps, but it didn't feel like enough villages, because you go to villages in those games all the time. Everyone's
Mm.
going all the time to a different village to buy stuff, or someone needs help, or whatever's happening. And so we thought, well, we should do like a big bunch of villages. And so we're doing a pack of like 8 different villages, like 2 in the countryside, 2 in the forest, 2 by rivers and whatever and stuff. And they're going to have different interiors. So the maps will be surface maps with rooftops, as they are. And then you'll have separately a set of interiors that fit those buildings. So the buildings will have, it'll be like, like a 3x4 building used a few times and stuff. And then you'll have a range of options for the interiors of those buildings. So you could use the map and you could decide you want those buildings to be a house, a shop, a blacksmith, and a whatever and stuff. And then play them up again. And this time it's not houses. Now they're all going to be, whatever else, other sort of, interior buildings and stuff. That's the stables now. It's not a house anymore. And that's a way of giving GMs the ability to buy a particular set of maps and to tailor it to what they need for their campaign, for their games.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess you've learned quite a lot as well from what could be maybe one of many VTT games you'll be able to play. So it's great that you've got that kind of
Yeah, it was good. It was because I used Astral VTT.
All right.
Yeah, which I'm not sure why I chose that, but I did anyway. But it was really good. I was actually I was like pleasantly surprised with how it handled like maps, particularly because that's what I wanted to care about, how the maps are dealt with and stuff. And so I used our Geomorph cave system set, and I quickly put together a sort of a cave network and things, and then I used dynamic lighting in there to make the cave system explorable in that sort of way. And actually it was quite for me to see, I was pleased that our maps worked very well in the VTT. Obviously when we first launched VTT maps years ago, we did have Roll20 and we like loaded them up and made sure they worked and everything and stuff. Yes. But we weren't like using it as a thing. So it was definitely a useful exercise for me to play a campaign, set up a campaign using our maps, and it gave me ideas for other ways that we could sort of like help people who are VTT players.
Amazing. So one more question from me, Joe, today. If you were an NPC in somebody's game, and you had a map of your own, what would it look like?
If I was an NPC, no, I think I would probably be like a wizard, right? Even though I don't like playing as a wizard when I play, but I think I'd be a wizard, and I think I would be a bit. I think I'd live in a messy hovel magic house, so some ramshackle falling down thing on a cliff top, and every room would be messy and filled up with scrolls and potions and skulls and just weird crap everywhere. And I would have this desk, and there'd be a stack of books either side, and just my face would peer through, and it would probably full of spiders. I like spiders.
Okay, Becky doesn't, but I'm okay with them. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much again for coming on board once again this year for Con+3. Thanks for taking the time as well to talk to me today, Joe. And all the best as well to both of you for, the rest of these interesting times and thereafter.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, hi, this is Joe from Heroic Maps, and I want to urge you to donate to the Butterfly Project. It's a really important and fantastic cause, and something that we support wholly. Thanks.